Welcome to this explainer, where we're breaking down the ultimate time travel tactical masterclass of Yuji Itadori. Picture this: 68 years after a bitter, isolating final battle, our protagonist is thrown all the way back to day one. But he isn't coming back empty-handed. No way. He is returning with a lifetime of brutal combat data, ready to turn a historically tragic timeline into an absolute strategic checkmate. Today, we're looking at a masterclass in asymmetrical warfare, where pure combat intelligence and sheer operational experience totally outweigh raw firepower. Let's open up the playbook.
So here's our strategic briefing for today's explainer. We'll start with his 68-year strategic advantage, zoom into his micro-tactics in combat, explore how he weaponizes psychology and alliances, look at how he forces the enemy's hand, and finally, wrap up with how he checkmates a 1,000-year-old mastermind.
Let's kick things right off with Section 1, the 68-year strategic advantage. We are looking at the macro-level edge you get from surviving a doomed future. We start with a pretty fascinating tactical dilemma. Seriously, how do you execute a flawless victory when you've traveled back to day one without any of your massive late-game arsenal? I mean, Yuji wakes up as a teenager again, he has absolutely no overwhelming cursed energy reserves to rely on, and there's no immediate Black Flash mastery baked into his muscles ready to deploy. He is armed with just his memories, a freshly awakened blood manipulation technique, and the tactical mind of a seasoned war veteran who's suddenly forced to fight an asymmetrical war. It is the ultimate test of combat intelligence over sheer force.
And this mental shift, it's his absolute greatest asset, acting as a massive force multiplier right out of the gate. We aren't looking at a naive teenager anymore who's just blindly reacting to every horror the Jujutsu world throws his way. Instead, we're looking at a cold, calculating operator. He is a proactive strategist, and because his soul has been hardened by 68 years of pure survival, it's now completely immovable. Strategically, this is huge. It means he can consume Sukuna's fingers to gain power without any risk of his body being hijacked. He has essentially taken the enemy's ultimate biological weapon and flipped it into his own personal battery.
So, from that immovable baseline, he rolls out this overarching three-step master plan. It forms a literal perfect blueprint to dismantle a 1,000-year-old plot before the villains even realize they're under attack. Step 1. Collect all 20 of Sukuna's fingers strictly to build up his own depleted energy reserves. Step 2. Systematically hunt down the disaster curses, guys like Mahito and Jogo, way before they even have the operational tempo to organize an offense. And Step 3. Completely nullify the Shibuya incident by making sure Gojo Satoru is never sealed. It's brilliantly simple, ruthlessly efficient, and it gives him total control of the battlefield.
All right, let's zoom in from that macro view for Section 2, micro-tactics in combat, and see exactly how this veteran execution looks on the battlefield.
What's wild here is how Yuji uses 68 years of hindsight to weaponize his enemy's exact techniques against them, just totally dismantling their offensive capabilities. Look at these countermeasures. Against the detention center's special grade, he purposely lets the creature beat him up. He feigns weakness just to bait its overconfidence, and then, bam, seamlessly unleashes a devastating string of 8 consecutive Black Flashes. Against Naoya Zanin, he literally endures blistering 24 frames per second attacks just long enough to mathematically map the timing, trapping Naoya with a point-blank supernova. He isn't wildly trading blows, he's downloading attack patterns in real time and countering with surgical, veteran precision.
And then we get to his most elusive target, Mahito. Here, Yuji completely bypasses the curse's external defenses using a crazy maneuver called reverse blood. He tracks Mahito down on day 4, entirely dictating the terms of engagement. After landing his initial strikes, he issues a command to the blood he's already fired into the curse's body, forcing it to violently reverse direction. This literally tears Mahito apart from the inside out. It's an agonizing, precision-based maneuver born from decades of combat mastery. He turns what was originally a desperate fight for survival into a cold, calculated execution. His tactical execution is refined literally down to the microsecond. When Nanami is brought in to teach him the Black Flash, Yuji casually walks up to a training dummy and hits the 0.0000001 second impact window on absolute command. I mean, wow! He doesn't rely on luck anymore, and he definitely doesn't need the adrenaline of life-or-death stakes to get in the zone. He has taken the ultimate critical hit, an anomaly in Jujutsu sorcery that most veterans struggle to land even once, and weaponized it into a highly reliable, everyday tool in his tactical arsenal.
But as any great general knows, strategy isn't just about throwing punches. It's about manipulating the board. This brings us to Section 3, Psychological Tactics and Alliances.
Which leads us to his most hilarious, yet incredibly effective, psychological warfare, pacifying the terrifying King of Curses into a cooperative battery. Sukuna is so used to commanding absolute terror, so what does Yuji do? He just completely ignores him. He firmly denies the bodily takeover with his immovable soul, treats the ancient curse like a mildly annoying roommate, and then brilliantly distracts him by making him play the video game Sekiro. And when Sukuna inevitably dies to a rooster in the game, his fragile ancient ego actually forces him to keep playing to prove himself. Yuji even bribes him with expensive modern strawberry cake in exchange for cooperation. It is a masterful, purely transactional subjugation of the universe's ultimate threat.
Beyond just handling Sukuna, Yuji uses his knowledge of future tragedies proactively. He instantly converts potential victims and fierce enemies into highly loyal allies, completely shifting the balance of power. For instance, he waits by Junpei's house and saves his mother from Mahito's curse before Junpei even knows what's happening. Boom, instantly securing a loyal friend and neutralizing a future threat. Later, when confronted by Choso, he uses his intimate memories of the future to actively acknowledge the bond of the death paintings. This psychological pivot completely pacifies Choso's rage and turns him against their mutual enemy, Kenjaku, right in the middle of a massive battle. That is diplomatic foresight at its absolute finest.
Eventually, though, a master tactician's moves will force the enemy to completely abandon their own playbook. Let's look at Section 4, Forcing the Enemy's Hand.
Yuji's aggressive, preemptive strikes absolutely devastate Kenjaku's perfectly laid plans, backing the mastermind into a chaotic and super vulnerable corner. Just look at this operational timeline getting completely crushed. By day 2, a major strategic asset in the detention center is dead. By day 4, Mahito, who's an absolute cornerstone of Kenjaku's overarching strategy, is completely broken and humiliated. By the time October 31st actually rolls around, the board is so heavily skewed in the hero's favor that Kenjaku's meticulous plan to seal Gojo and Shibuya is rendered totally unviable. The mastermind is no longer playing chess, he's playing catch-up.
Realizing he can no longer control the board, Kenjaku adopts a desperate new strategy, thinking, if one monster could rewrite fate, then force fate to drown in choices. He fully abandons the surgical strike of the prison realm and instead just detonates pure, unadulterated chaos. He releases ancient reincarnated sorcerers and activates barriers all over Japan, essentially triggering a massive citywide battle royale. He's forced to trigger his endgame phases vastly early, just to cope with Yuji's overwhelming tactical advantage. Yuji hasn't just beaten the plan, he has fundamentally broken the villain's operational tempo. Which brings us to the climax. The board is finally cleared for Section 5, Checkmating the Mastermind.
In this final confrontation, we see such a stark contrast. The villain's reliance on endless, convoluted manipulation completely crumbles against Yuji's terrifyingly simple, unhesitating certainty. Kenjaku attacks with 1,000 years of preparation compressed into massive waves of cursed energy, constantly changing angles, bending space, trying to force an evolution on the battlefield. But Yuji? He simply counters it all instantly. He doesn't waste a single motion. He isn't analyzing the threat in the moment. He is fighting with the deeply ingrained muscle memory of a man who has already seen every trick, trap, and technique the universe has to offer.
When Kenjaku notes that Yuji fights like someone who already knows the outcome, Yuji corrects him. Actually, it's not about knowing the future. It's about the unbearable grief of the past. As he puts it, I fight like someone who can't afford to lose again. That profound grief is the unshakable foundation of his flawless tactical execution. There is no hesitation, no fear of death, only the absolute refusal to watch his friends die a second time. And with that unyielding, hardened resolve, he delivers the final Black Flash, ending a millennium-old plot with a single perfect strategic strike.
To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought. If you were handed a second chance and 68 years of tragic hindsight, could you turn your own trauma into the ultimate tactical checkmate? Itadori Yuji didn't just survive his second chance. He utterly dominated it. He weaponized hindsight, transformed psychological warfare into an absolute art form, and literally shattered destiny over his knee. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep analyzing, keep strategizing, and I'll catch you in the next one.